folks. I'm Serena. I grew up in an abusive alcoholic home. I was bullied relentlessly when I was a child in elementary school. I suffered years of sexual abuse. My father committed suicide when I was 17, and I lost my first and only son to a form of childhood cancer when he was 4.5 years old. My life has been all about overcoming obstacles. I've done it, and you can too.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Draven's Den. I am your host, Stan Miles, but some of you guys know that. Maybe there's people that don't know that, but, well, now you know that. And that's Draven back there, and that's Fred over there. And welcome back to another great show. This will be a little different. Not a musician, not a paranormal investigator, but a very, very, very dear friend of mine for 25, 30 years now. Serena Jones-McGregor. She has written the book Talk Less, Pray More. It's a compilation of writings and poems that delve into a bipolar, schizoaffective brain as it explores mental health, death, and rebirth through Jesus Christ. Serena, what have you been doing for 30 years?
Oh, goodness. Just trying to manage my life, trying to keep one step ahead, right?
Yeah, it's really all we can do. But, when I reached out probably a month ago, looking for folks that wanted to come on the show and talk about, inspirational stories and such, you sent me a very, very compelling email. I had no idea, you
Yeah.
know, um, walking through the halls in Stafford and seeing you every day and all that kind of stuff. You were just the wisecracking funny redhead, you know.
Well, people don't really know what's going on with, especially with teenagers and children behind closed doors and within their homes.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. You know, um, I know things have kind of changed a little bit over the years, since we were young, but there's still a lot of people suffering in silence, and you know, maybe it'll always be that way. Hopefully, it won't. But I definitely encourage people not to suffer in silence anymore. They don't have to.
Correct.
And you know, the story you're going to tell tonight will attest to that. So let's start in the beginning. Um, you had mentioned that in your video, you mentioned that there was abuse early on. You don't have to get in detail, obviously. But tell us a little bit about the just kind of the overall picture. What was going on?
You know, um, the first time that I was molested was by somebody that lived down the street from us, and it was an isolated incident. And as far as I knew, my daddy went and beat that boy up. So it just was, but it was. But then it began within a year later with an older cousin of mine, and it went on from the age that I was 4 until I was 11. And it really distorted my way of thinking. Um, it really made me disconnect and twist with what should have been normal affection with sexual feelings. And there was nobody to talk to about it. There was nobody, we didn't talk about those things in the 1980s. We brushed them under the rug and we let sleeping dogs lie. I can remember my grandmother saying that to me, that it's best sometimes to just let sleeping dogs lie, but we really can't do that. We have to be able to express ourselves and talk about these experiences so that we can work through them.
No, you're absolutely correct. I, I mean, I can't imagine. The with me growing up, my worst enemy was just being alone. I can't imagine what what that would be like. So, did did it take you to your adulthood to process those first traumatic experiences, or
Yes, definitely. I did, when I was 17 years old. Well, actually, I was the later part of my 16th year, I was in Alaska. And that was the first time that I came out and told somebody that what had happened to me. I told my mom, and her response was, well, what do you want me to do about it now, Serena? And here's the problem. The problem is that my parents themselves grew up in difficult homes. And so they themselves didn't know what to do when these kinds of problems arise. And so when it happened to their own children, they were at a loss as to what to do. I mean, it happened in Virginia with somebody who was living in New York, and I was in Alaska with my mom. So what was she to do? She had no clue. Um, and it wasn't until my second marriage that I really started to process what had happened to me. And I actually confronted the person who molested me for 7 years. I called him on the phone. And so, I mean, he knows that I'm still here.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, would you recommend the confrontation? Did that help going straight to the source?
Yes.
Yes.
It took the power away from him and gave it to me.
And now, how old were you at that point?
22.
You were 22. So when you did that, so from that point, you said that you mentioned mental illness. So how does it correlate? Was that part of the mental illness? Was this something that was genetically passed on to you? How did that transfer? That process.
Well, back then, my parents didn't go to doctors or psychiatrists or anything like that. My father ended up committing suicide when I was 17. So clearly there was something going on with him. My mother, other than being a very godly woman, she was the epitome of normal. I do believe that genetically speaking, I mean, with everybody else in my family and the mental illnesses that they have, I wasn't going to dodge the bullet. I don't think that it would have been as bad as it has become had it not been for the traumas in my life. And not necessarily the traumas that happened, but not knowing how to cope or deal or react to those traumas.
Now, your book has a lot of poems and so forth in it. Were you writing the entire time as you were growing up as an outlet, some way to get it out of your head?
I've always kind of been drawn to writing. The first time I went to counseling, I was 19 years old. That's when I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. And it was at the RACSB over in Spotsylvania with a lovely woman named Sarah. I wish I knew her last name. She was amazing. And she said, all of these feelings that you have inside, all of these things that you want to say to your father that you can't say, write them in a letter. Just keep writing letter after letter after letter until you say everything you want to say to him. And so that's what I started doing. And I just never stopped. I just continued writing letters, and writing letters has become writing poems and writing opinions. And I communicate better when I'm writing, because when I talk, because of the way my brain works, I often forget what I say, and so I repeat myself. And when I catch myself doing that when I'm writing, I can just scratch it out.
Really? Yeah. For the younger generation, erasers used to be a thing. So, but so what's your, what's your advice to the young people that's going through this process? Kind of break it down a little bit in this is what I experienced, so it's possible that you're feeling this, and if you're feeling this, my advice is.
Hmm. When I was a teenager, there were so many signs. There were from my promiscuous behavior to my outlandish lies to my craziness. And everybody always told me I was crazy, but nobody ever put a name to it. My advice, especially to teenagers, you guys are so blessed to have the world of knowledge at your fingertips. You need to read. You need to read about everything. If you think that you have a mental illness, go read about that mental illness. Go to your parents, go to your teachers, go to your counselors. Talk to people. If one person doesn't listen, that's just one person. Talk to another person. Eventually, somebody will listen and help you.
Now, are there any resources specifically, and we're just talking about kind of the childhood right now, um, any resources that you can recommend? You said they have the world of information at their fingertips. Now, there's some that are really great, but there's others, and there's others that aren't so great.
Stay off WebMD.
Get off web.
Off
You
WebMD.
sneezed, you're gonna die.
You're going to die if you go to WebMD.
But yeah, I mean, you mentioned RESCB. You know, is that a really good source to go to? I'm sure every state has its own form of RESCB. Rappahannock. I'm trying to remember the
Virginia, when I went there, they were, and mind you, this was many years ago. I was 19 years old, but they were very good about getting me in, getting me counseling, and getting me with a counselor, because the first counselor that I was matched with was a man, and I wasn't going to talk to no man. And so they very quickly changed the counselor and matched me with a woman who was, like I said, she was a godsend for me.
Forgive me for a moment. I've been. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Please.
Oh, no, I was just going to add that the other thing that really helped me in my life as a teenager and a young adult were my teachers.
Well, that actually leads to another really good question, because you know as well as I do, the teachers from our time had a completely different mentality than the teachers from today, because the teachers from today are us, and even we're getting into the retirement stage. So there's a generation in between that is now the young teachers and the current in the middle of their career teachers. So with that generation of mentality, I always promise I'm never getting political. I just don't do politics, man. But is that a good direction to go? Do you feel that the mentality of that generation in their mid-career of teachers, and this is nothing bad about teachers, it's really not, is that a good place to go with current mentality of the world?
Absolutely, because I think that for the most part, let's face it, teachers aren't getting rich teaching. For the most part, teachers do go into that career wanting to change lives and wanting to help. The teachers of today aren't so different than the teachers of the yesteryears. They're still there to educate our children and to care for our children. I think that a few bad apples can't spoil the entire bunch. You just pluck those bad apples out.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. And that's kind of the point I wanted you to express. Forgive me for a moment not being rude, but I do want to go to Facebook Live because you got a couple of comments. Michelle Sulcer, you might remember her from way back in the day. She said, "You are very brave and strong for sharing your story. Abuse is never okay. You are not alone, beautiful girl."
Thank you.
So Nancy Bagley, she said, "Oh, wow, I found out who my biological father was 7 weeks after he passed away. I never thought of writing my father a letter to help release the feelings of abandonment and help me heal. Thank you."
Yeah, please do. Please try that.
You got a couple other folks that are watching. So the next thing that you mentioned, going back to the mental illness, I've suffered from manic depression my whole life.
Yeah.
And
I knew that about you.
yes, a lot of people, few people knew that about me. And as a teenager, I knew it, but again, we didn't know what it was called.
Yeah.
All I knew is that I felt like crap all the time, you know. And then the bullies picking on me, and you know, I was the outcast because I had hair halfway down my back. Yes, believe it or not. And the whole nine, I got into writing, and I was writing poetry and writing stories and all that kind of stuff. But the whirlwind of emotions in my head, you know, that carried on well into, you know, into my 30s. And what was your trick for clearing the fog that you know very well, the fog that I mean, where it just seems like everything is so thick and blinding in your head that you don't feel normal? What was your trick for doing that?
Finding my husband. When I found my husband, I found somebody who I could be open with and honest with and tell him all the thoughts that I have and the feelings that I have. And I knew that a lot of the things that I thought and believed weren't normal. And he was the first man who held my hand and said, honey, you're right. You're not normal, but that's okay.
Gotcha.
So having somebody that I can trust, like when I start having delusions now, or when I start feeling like I'm becoming psychotic, I go to my husband and I say, this is what's going on. I think this is causing it. What can I do? And I allow him to guide me. You know that I'm a devout follower of Jesus Christ. And in my teachings, I found that I'm supposed to allow my husband to guide me. And we can't always do that because we don't always find righteous men, but I did. So lucky for me, I just have somebody who can help me out.
Right on. Now, since we're such a world of, you know, multiple beliefs, multiple religions, you know, I was never raised in a religious atmosphere. I was just told, you know, it doesn't matter what you believe in, if it's a toaster oven or a Snickers bar, you know, just believe in something, you know. How would you, I guess, from a young person's perspective of not really knowing which, you know, which faith that they should believe in, when they're just really looking for help, they're looking for something to guide them, you know, what is the beacon they should look for? Not necessarily a particular faith, but what is the beacon to look for?
The beacon is when most of us go through a period of searching for what it is that we believe and searching for what it is that we can grab onto and have faith in. And the beacon is that you continue to search and you continue to search until something touches your soul. And when something ignites your soul and it says to you, follow me, I am the way, then that's what you follow. For me, that has not always been Jesus Christ. For a long time, I was only following Buddhist ways because I didn't really know Jesus. All I knew was what I had learned from people mansplaining the Bible to me and from the few times that I went to church. Once I opened the book up myself and started reading it for myself, well, I think that's what we're all supposed to do because God speaks to us all in different ways. I myself am a Christian, but I'm fascinated with other religions. And I think that you should have, as long as you have faith in something, it doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's just about believing in something bigger than yourself and knowing that sometimes we are powerless to things and we have to hand those hand those things over to whatever our higher power is.
Yeah. It's carrying that weight all your life it's a heavy burden. It really is.
Yeah.
Find something. Like I often say that I didn't rescue Draven, he rescued me. He's completely blind, but he meets me at the door every day when, life just sucks and, you know, um yeah, he rescued me, So the point of that being, if you're in a position where you can have a pet, you know, rescue one. I'm telling you, they will make a world of difference. They really will.
Every time, yes. I'm currently, in case anybody is trying to adopt out a bird, I am currently in search of a bird.
Actually, I know someone who is. So,
We'll have to talk about that a little later.
Yeah, if you're watching, Michelle added another comment. She said, "Thanks for sharing about your manic depression." Oh, that was to me. Sorry.
Oh, it's good. You do that. You do that on your Facebook. You share when you're up. You share when you're down. And I'm in. I love that about you, Stan. I love that you, as a man, feel comfortable with yourself. That you can't share that with us. It's so important.
Yeah, that wasn't easy because I went through a very long period of time where either I didn't have anybody to talk to at all, or I could not afford the reaction I would get. I couldn't, not monetarily, of course, and now I just don't care. So, you reach a point in your life and where you're just like, you know what, you like me, you don't like me. It's not my biggest
Isn't that
worry
great about
anymore.
the 40s? Like we
Oh, I
reach the
know.
40s and it's like, what? We've been missing this all this time. Are you kidding?
Yes, exactly. It's just like, whatever. Um, well, thank you. Well, thank you, Serena, and thank you, Michelle. It said, I too have suffered with that as well. Fortunately, I am much better now at managing this condition. Mariana spoke up and said, what kind of bird are you looking for? See, told you somebody was watching.
Now remember, folks, I'm in Florida, so but just a cute little songbird, just something to keep me company that I can spend some time with.
Oh. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, not a big bird, not a conure or anything. They'll take your face off.
So kind of back into the timeline of things. You mentioned, unfortunately, you had a child that passed away.
I did. He was amazing. He saved me. I found out I was pregnant with him about 6 months after my father committed suicide, and he gave my life meaning. He was an incredible soul. He was an old soul. He was a wise soul. And I got to spend 4 years and 10 months with him. And the God took him home with neuroblastoma cancer, but he did put up a fight, and God was merciful to him in the end. He didn't suffer for months on end. We took him home from the hospital, and he actually got to be a normal little boy for 3 months, and didn't really get sick until the actual day that he passed.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very blessed. I have 3 children, and something I kind of saw in my own kids, and I see in a lot of kids, is, and I'm not sure what any of you folks believe. It's not about what you believe or not believe, but this is just what I've witnessed. Children seem to, for the first X amount of years of their life, carry over what I think is their learning from their previous life, and that's what you typically see as like an old soul. This is just, you kind of look at a child that says something profound, and you're like, how do you know that? Because I know SpongeBob didn't teach you that, you know. So I would very much suggest listening a little more to some of their ramblings because they're not necessarily ramblings, you know.
Oh, correct, correct. The night before he died, he told his mama that he was going to go live on the moon tomorrow. So,
Wow.
and after I have a daughter. I have two daughters actually, but my oldest daughter was born about a year and a half after Christopher passed away. And she was very connected to him for the first 10 years of her life. She would play with him and write to him, but she never knew him,
Right.
but she does.
Wow. Um, wow. So, um, you the description in your book, it says death and rebirth. So I assume the rebirth you mean is you're coming through all of that traumatic experience and so forth. How did you go ahead?
The rebirth is actually the experience that I went through last year of I found myself in a very scary place. I was feeling very psychotic and I prayed. And it wasn't something I was used to doing. This is all kind of new to me. I've always given glory to God, but I've never really talked to God. And so I talked to God that night and I prayed and I asked him to take my free will. And I thought that was a great idea. And Stan, he blessed me with schizoaffective disorder, which is basically like like I already had bipolar, right? So that's not bad enough.
Right.
No, he said, here, have some schizophrenia and mix in with that and have some people talking to you. Uh, and it's funny because that's what I prayed for and that's what I got.
Okay. um, well, so I imagine you've done the research on the different, that disorder and the bipolar disorder
Oh
and
yeah.
so forth. So to help people kind of understand from the textbook and from the personal experience, what is that like? I mean, obviously the bipolar, it's going from one extreme to the other and so forth. But when those extremes develop their own personalities, what is that like? How does it affect you?
Well, for the bipolar, because I've been afflicted with that for so many years, I've kind of figured out my bipolar is on a very dependable cycle. I know when it's coming and I know when it's leaving and I know whether or not I'm going to be manic or depressed. And so if it gets triggered in any way, then it may make it worse going up or going down. But with this schizoaffective disorder, like I started hearing voices, and when it first started happening, you're going to think I'm nuts, but I am. It was aliens. They were aliens talking to me, trying to
I'm
get me.
not going to say it's aliens, but it's aliens.
It was aliens. And then the aliens changed to Moses and John the Baptist. And then all of a sudden, my parents who are dead were able to talk to me. And I could really hear their voices. They were really with me. And there were some parts of it that were very scary. I was called to do some very scary things to myself. Um, but it was also very, very interesting. I definitely feel like my bipolar disorder has been hell to deal with, and it's been hell for other people to deal with too. This schizoaffective, my entire life I was scared of the whole schizo anything because I have a brother who has schizophrenia and he's basically lived in the woods for the past 25 years. Society is scared of him. I was scared of him. And now that I've experienced what it is that he's been experiencing all these years, I'm not scared of it anymore because it's nothing really to be afraid of. Like, you don't even hear my voices, so how are they bothering you?
I mean, I can tell you from personal experience. Yes, I'm making another major reveal here, kids. Um, Going through my lifetime, having so many different emotions, from one extreme to the other, it did take on a life of its own. And I can specifically remember uh, me not wanting to think those thoughts so much, me not wanting to feel those feelings so much, that it became almost like a demonic presence, if you will. I compartmentalized all of that negativity into an entity. Now, some people in some definitions would say that is a form of possession. Uh, you can create your own possession. It very well could be. I don't know. But I would literally, at times, start talking to myself, and that voice wasn't mine. But what I have realized looking back on it is that I was trying to separate the good parts from the bad parts of myself.
Yeah.
And eventually, I beat it. And that's how I became to put myself in front of the camera, not be afraid to say those thoughts, and use what I learned to help other people. So anybody watching, the reason I'm going so in depth is for this reason. What Serena's telling you and what I'm telling you is that there is a light at the end of it, but it's going to take a lot of strength from you. You have to, in whatever way, shape, or form, make it something that you can fight, not just a monkey on your back that you can't get to. You got to put it in front of you and you got to fight it. So Serena, I'm not trying to be Dr. Phil here. I swear I'm not.
Oh no, go ahead, hon.
I feel like yeah. Do you have your book with you? I should have asked you before the show. Okay, awesome. Would you mind reading one of the shorter passages? Something maybe that pertained to what we talked about. One of the poems, even.
How about if I read my husband's favorite poem?
Okay, sounds good.
I didn't know it was his favorite until today. It's actually a poem that I wrote for my aunt last year before she passed away. A new season has come, the crispness of fall, changing leaves of color, a painting for us all. Crispness of leaves, changing of wind, into the winter is where it descends. Footprints in the snow from a mama and fawn, a snowflake falls down onto the nose of pond. The gentle little doe tries to lick the flake that's already disappeared. Oh, for heaven's sake. Out of my window, the painting I see was sent by God, especially for me. That was called Windows.
Very nice. Very nice. And it goes a long way to say the amount of clarity that you've managed to have. You can hear the emotion behind the words. You can see the story behind. At least I can. I see the story behind the words. And it takes a clear hindsight to put it that way. So, bravo.
Thank you.
Very well done. Very well done. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude. Okay. So, where do we find this book? How do we read Serena's mind?
You can find me on Amazon. Talk Less Pray More is on Amazon. You can hit me up on Facebook. I have an author page, She Says with Serena, and you can buy it straight from me and I'll send it right to your home.
And you also have a podcast. Tell us about that.
I do have a podcast. I'm trying to get it focused on mental health awareness. It is She Says with Serena. If you go into YouTube and search She Says Mental Health, you will find me.
So are your videos more like, if you're having a bad day, you put it on a video to get it out, or what's your drive behind each segment?
My drive behind it, honestly, is to connect with other people who have mental illness and to let them know that they're not alone. And it's to really get people to do the 4 R's. And the 4 R's is something that I started doing with my daughter. She has high functioning autism and some mental illnesses of her own. And so what we do is the 4 R's are reading. We read about our mental illness and we read about other mental illnesses that are close to ours because so often people are misdiagnosed. We reflect on our own lives. We try to recognize what we have seen in ourselves when we have seen symptoms in ourselves, and then we learn how to regulate our feelings.
Okay. Very cool. Do you talk about that more in depth in your podcast?
Honestly, Stan, they're kind of all over the place right now. For the past month, I've been manic, and it's just been in the past 4 days that's kind of eased up off of me. So I'd really have to go back and I think they've kind of been all over the place, but the focus is definitely mental health awareness.
Randomness rules.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the great thing is, you know, for a long time I thought I had to have some kind of structure in order to solving the problems that I was going through. But the fact is you don't. You know,
Yeah.
you deal with the left punch when it's a left punch, you deal with the right punch when it's a right punch, you know, and it doesn't happen to have to come in any specific order. But find a way. Stand up. Fight. You know, don't let.
I guess that's what the videos are about. When I started them because I knew I needed to have some therapy. I knew I needed some talk therapy, but I can't afford it right now, and I don't have insurance. And so this is the next best thing to me was getting in front of the camera and talking to my friends, and that's how it started.
Mm-hmm.
And then the idea of reaching other people, and which has already started to happen, and it's wonderful. And any of you out there, if you're feeling alone, if you need somebody to talk to, please reach out. Come to She Says with Serena. There are other people there. We are willing to listen, help, guide you in whatever way we can. You're not alone, and we want everybody to know every day that you're worthy.
Right on. Those words, "you're not alone." I mean, it's only 3 words, but it's extremely impactful for a lot of people out there. You know, I know for one, if I had heard those words back in my teenage years, it would have tremendously helped.
Yeah.
But you're not. You know, I mean, Serena's probably better to talk to than I am. But you know, hey, you got my email. You know, just, reach out, talk to me, tell me a story. You know, because being in a room alone, metaphorically, is a real bad place to be. So, you know, you always want to build. If you're going to build walls, build a window in the wall, build people. You know, build something in there so that there's a two-way communication if someone's trying to help.
Sure.
So, unfortunately, folks, my producer, EK the DJ, he is under the weather right now, so I'm going to cut this show a little short. Oh, Nancy said, "Lovely poem." So,
thank you, Nancy.
But we want to thank Serena for coming on the show and kind of, you know, walking us through some of those darker moments and how she got herself to the light again. For her, it was her faith and determination. You know, for you, it could be a toaster oven, like I said, you know, whatever.
Spaghetti monster.
Huh?
Flying spaghetti monster.
Yeah, yes, the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. Everybody's got to love them. They're fun. So thank you for tuning in. And next week, hopefully, fingers crossed, I will have Norman Voss on, the bassist for the Bret Michaels Band. I will let you know if that is going to come to be. And thank you again for tuning in to Draven's Den. Eric, take us home. Nope, he might be asleep. Okay.